Next up will be Daniel Davis.
The first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was about diplomacy itself. When you're going to engage in any kind of diplomacy, I mean, the first thing you have to do is you have to say, what is our strategic objective? What do we want out of all of this stuff? And I think that very clearly, at least categorically, whether we're talking North Korea or anyone else, it's got to be we want the security of the United States to be ensured and economic prosperity to be facilitated. Unfortunately, one of the negative sides of the results of 9/11 has been that we have militarized our foreign policy. And, you know, President Bush is famous, you're either with us or against us, and, you know, and bring it on and all that kind of thing. And we kind of got into this mindset that started there, and it really has kind of pervaded on autopilot, that we tell people what to do, and we tell our allies what they're going to do, and we try to compel others to do everything that we desire, irrespective of their personal interest or their national interest in it as well. And that just doesn't work very well. It doesn't work very well with your adversaries, and it certainly doesn't work very well even with your allies, because they want to cooperate, they want to work with us, but they also want to feel like they matter in this. And when we try to just tell everybody what they're going to do, and we try to compel others to they have to do what we want, or we're going to use military force, that complicates our situation. It complicates our matters. In the situation with North Korea right here, one of the other problems that happens in this town is that we want results right away. You know, we are going to enter negotiations for whatever, like say this, you know, the shutdown situation, whatever, irrespective of how that worked out. But the fact is, we know in a relatively short period of time, two sides are going to come together and something's going to come out of it, and then we're going to live with whatever happens after that. Well, diplomacy doesn't work that way. I mean, anytime you're talking about going from a situation where, you know, you had 20-something years of you know, the situation in North Korea where you had the problem with nuclear weapons and the program and all that, and the, you know, the antagonism. Ever since 1953, this, you know, technical state of war that's existed, and the troops on either side of the border, you don't get rid of that in a year. And I found it a little almost comical, but certainly head scratching, that, you know, just months after Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un, is that people were like, wait, why isn't this done? Why don't we have a completed agreement? Where's the denuclearization? And you know, everything's a fault, or everything's a mistake, and it's not working, it's just talk. And I'm thinking, nobody is going to get to that point. That no one should expect, and certainly if you put yourself in that position, no one should expect that you're going to give up all of these things without getting something in return. So the idea that Trump is going to go in there and just issue our directives, and that Kim Jong-un is going to say, oh, okay, cool, sure, here's all my nuclear weapons, here's all of my, you know, everything, and we'll send them off to China, and then if it would be all right with you, if you would go ahead and, you know, move the sanctions off afterward, that'd be great. You know, probably not very likely to happen. So what we have to do is we have to be realistic and look at diplomatic history of things that have really been, you know, worked out really well for the United States. They take years to accomplish in most cases, and they almost all have a step for step, because you have to create trust on both sides. Even if you're talking about somebody that has gulags and all this that you don't like, you still have to generate trust so that they will do stuff that ultimately works out to both people's advantage. And again, I go back to our original comment here. What is our objective and our strategic intent? We need to make sure that the United States is safe. So we don't want to go into a situation that could actually precipitate the very thing that we're concerned about. And if we tell the North Koreans that you're either going to do what we say, or, as was certainly happening in 2017, we're going to put military force on the table, then you make it even less likely that it's going to happen, and you make it take longer to get done. You know, one of the things I want to talk about specifically, and kind of, I don't want to repeat some of the great things that Doug said or that Harry's about to say. I do want to point out from a military perspective, what is the alternative here? If we don't go, you know, if we don't get our primary objective, which some people want to say is complete verifiable denuclearization, what is the alternative? Now, I would first of all argue that peace on the peninsula should be the primary must-have outcome, not CVID. That would be great. If that happens in many years from now, that would be super, but I think that you have to have peace on the ground first, and that will facilitate the potential for denuclearization. Because as Doug very aptly said, If you don't feel that you're threatened and your security is at risk, then you're much more likely to potentially trade away some other things that might give you some benefit. So if we seek peace first and then denuclearization second, then I think we actually have a shot at long-term success. But in case anybody thinks that we can compel this and use any kind of military force, I just want to disabuse you of that idea, because that would be catastrophic for everybody, not just for them over there, but for us here, for our military men and women in uniform, and the thousands of Americans that live over there, and frankly, even the North Koreans. I care about everybody. I don't want to see anyone get killed in a war, because I've seen a lot of war. I've got 4 combat deployments, and I've seen everything from high-intensity tank-on-tank conflicts to classic counterinsurgency, military trainers, and I've seen way too much destruction from war, and I have not seen it really accomplish anything in my lifetime for the United States, with the potential exception of Desert Storm. You can make some cases there that worked out, and then we redeployed out. But there's all kinds of other things we could talk about. But certainly in the post-9/11 era, I think it's pretty safe to say that militarily, we have not achieved outcomes beneficial to the United States. Our threat against terrorism is higher now than it's been since before 9/11 by a large stretch. You know, even the situation in Afghanistan, it's just a permanent, perpetual war without even the potential for end. Because in military terms, you have to, if you're sending military forces in somewhere, you should have an achievable, attainable military objective that's tied to political realities, so that it has an end state that's even possible. Right now, none of that exists. There is no end state even articulated, so the only thing you can do is just continue having conflict. If we went into North Korea under any circumstances, most likely it's going to quickly deteriorate into an all-out war that's going to kill hundreds of thousands, probably millions. Now, you can say that because we have the greater resources, probably in time we would prevail over that, probably. But the cost would be catastrophic and just unimaginable, and we would be far worse, and we would be set back decades. Far better to say, let's take a step-by-step approach. Let's give some credibility and credence to the legitimate security needs of the other side, and then let's find out where we have common ground, build confidence step by step, and let's get to a situation where military force by either side isn't even on the table, and then you can actually have a conversation about, do we even want to keep troops there anymore? Is that in our national interest? Right now, the idea is, if you even broach the subject, I mean, there's so many, especially neocon folks, but actually across the board politically, that it's just like immediately rejected without consideration, because it's going to create, you know, the infamous void that's going to be filled in by fill in the blank, anything. But the fact is, those troops were there. The reason we even had them there in the first place was to keep peace and to prevent our security from deteriorating. If you have a situation where peace reigns, then why would you want to keep them there and keep spending that money year after year and risking the troops' lives and all those things that go along with that? If our security is maintained and guaranteed, if at some point in the future that actually has occurred 5, 10 years from now, then it's a legitimate reason that we don't need to keep those troops there anymore. That should at least be on the table for discussion, because the ultimate objective is not how many troops can we keep abroad, but how do we keep the best peace for the United States and allow our economic prosperity to continue on. That should be our objectives. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam.